serving on committees and things. I had a video. I had a visual? Oh. Yeah, sorry. Thanks.
That was really interesting. Thanks, Sean. Next up, we have Olivia Olson, who's a community engagement librarian at Troy Public Library.
Thank you for having me. I just want to get a kind of feel for the room. Are there any prospective public librarians in here? All right, maybe I'll be able to convince you over. So, I graduated from Wayne in 2011, and when I graduated, I worked 2 part-time jobs. I actually worked as a bookmobile librarian at the Rochester Hills Library, and I also applied and got a job at the time. It was called technology librarian at the Troy Public Library. And if you don't know the history of Troy Public Library, 2011 was a rough year. The library nearly closed due to some political infighting, and it's a long story, but it nearly closed, which if you visit TPL today would just be baffling to you because it's such a busy library and it's really important to the community, I think. So before I started, I applied for a part-time technology librarian job. And when I was in the interview, I talked so much about how I loved teenagers and working with teens that Kathy Russ, who's the director, sort of said, "Oh, do you want to be our teen librarian?" And I said, "Sure." So luckily, I was able to work as their teen librarian. So I worked there part-time for a few years, and then I was promoted to full-time teen librarian. And the teens in our community were very hungry for programs because for nearly a year before I started there were no teen programs. So everything had kind of shut down in anticipation of closing. So it was a sort of an overwhelming part-time job when I first got it, but it was exciting because there was a lot of opportunity for innovation. So when I started, there were no teen programs. So I started a teen advisory board, probably like how you guys have one, which I think is sort of a necessary staple for a public library. It invites kids in to the library to give them a sense of ownership over the programs that we do. And it also makes sure that we know that we're doing programs that they actually want, not programs that we think they want. And I mention all of that because I started as our community engagement librarian in January, and reaching out to the community and bringing them into the library and figuring out what kind of programs different populations in our community want has been super important because we don't have an outreach department at Troy. It's just me and whoever other librarians feel like helping me at the time. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. So I started in January, I don't know if I said that, as this community outreach librarian. And I knew I wanted to do more than just outreach. So how I had thought of outreach, and I think how many people think of it in public libraries, is deliveries of books to homebound seniors. And that seemed to be just the sort of reigning definition of what an outreach librarian did. But what me and some other librarians, what we decided to do was to sort of sit down together and break down what we thought were underserved populations in our community. And based on census data, based on anecdotal evidence, because we've been working the reference desk for so long, and we see based on what kind of books get checked out, and also which programs that we do are heavily attended at the library and what people seemed hungry for in the community. But all of that was no replacement for actually reaching out to community organizations and seeing what people in the community wanted. So I would suggest if anyone decides to be and community engagement, probably in academic libraries too, could probably benefit from this also. But from the public library standpoint, that meant actually reaching out to other organizations. So we did improve our services to seniors, and part of that was going to American House or to other assisted living homes and talking to their book clubs. And I actually attend the American House book club. They have a monthly club every month. And we figured out what kind of books they wanted. And there's sort of I don't want to say maybe it is ageism, but there's an idea, I think, in librarians that older people aren't comfortable using technology. I have found that to be completely false. The American House people were really hungry to learn about the apps that we provide. They really wanted to know about how to download things and have us just go through and show them how to do that. And I wouldn't have thought that. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I would not have thought that myself unless I actually reached out to them and asked them. So that's an example of sort of supplementing our services to seniors. Also, I reached out to the community center in Troy. I think the danger of public libraries sometimes is to become very insulated in what you already do. And it seemed like the community center and the library had a lot of overlap in the programs that we do, but we didn't know that because we didn't know what the community center did. So we sort of undertook this research project to figure out what they do and found ways to create complementary programs. So we did a series of mindfulness programs, sort of meditation classes, and then they did yoga classes. And so the patrons that were interested in our classes, we could sort of cross-promote all of our programs. So that was good. So 3 populations that we realized we were underserving or that were a challenge. One was what we call emerging adults, so it's like 20-year-old to maybe 35-year-olds. It was tough to get them in. We lose them when they go to college, and then we usually don't get them back until they bring their kids back in, so it was trying to find a way to reach out to that population. We did a few things. One is the form that you see up here. It's the Next 3 Books form. And of course, all ages of adults can use this, but it's a way for people who are too busy to come to the library. They submit this form, they put their name, I don't remember what else is on there, their barcode number, whatever, and what kind of books that they're interested in reading. And we submit a little personalized list of 3 books, 3 little read-alikes that we think they might like. And it seems like such a simple thing. I swear I've had more people like come to the library and ask for me to thank me. No one ever thanks me. That's not like, no one ever asks for me personally and thanks me for stuff. Maybe that's being a teen librarian for many years, but I'm just kidding. They're very grateful, teens are. But having that personalized connection, and I wonder if that's something also we could think about is creating personalized connections with our community, especially in terms of like scary robots taking over our job. When you said that, I thought immediately maybe that's why I'm trying to like be friends with everyone in the community, is because it's this real human connection. And another part of that has been actually attending community events, which I think is just incredibly important. Knowing what the events are in the community, which is not easy, it takes work, but having a table at the farmer's market. We have a table, Beaumont has like a baby fair. We got a table there. It's really easy. And the community organizations are always like, oh yeah, the library, sure, you can come. We have a table in the community center. We just sit there for an hour every Thursday, and people are always surprised. We're right next door to the community center. People will say, oh, where's the library? So it's a way of talking to people and kind of like luring them in and getting them to come to programs. So that was another way, because we assumed that target population was not, they didn't have the time to actually come into the library. So we were trying to find ways to do that. We also did a book club at a bar, which I know a lot of libraries are doing. And we also did seasonally trivia programs at Granite City, which is a restaurant in Troy. So we had a Gilmore Girls trivia, and we had like 60 people my age, which I've never seen that happen at a library program before. And it was great because it was something that people wouldn't necessarily expect a library to do. What else? Oh, we felt like we were underserving tweens too. That was another group. They sort of get lost in the shuffle between young kids, which are really well served by our youth services department, and teens, and our teen librarian does a bunch of programs. So it's like that 9 through 12, they seemed like they were hungry for programs. So we started doing sort of like a mini teen advisory board for them where we do a craft. And then their sense of ownership comes from they vote, or they give them little Post-its, they write down what kind of program they want to see next month, and then they vote on whatever it is. So it's just that little bit of ownership for them, feeling like the library listens to them and cares about what they want and are actively trying to provide programs for that age group. And it's been going really well. So so that's another one. And another way to get tweens in to try to figure out what they want to do. And then this is something that we want to do, that we're working on right now, is we're sort of in the research phase of improving our services to patrons with disabilities, because we don't do much of that. And we do have groups that meet in Troy that we could reach out to and ask them, what kind of programs do you want? What are some of the barriers to coming to the library? I know I've done a couple of tours of the library with some group homes, and their caregivers, or the people who run the group homes, are often afraid of being too loud. So why not do one before the library opens, or on a Friday, because we're closed on Fridays, we could open the library for a couple hours to have them come in and do a program and tour the library and feel like, I mean, we did that for teens, because teens were too loud. So we had them like do after hours programs or something like that. So that's something we're working on. And that just takes reaching out to those groups and saying, what are you guys into? Like, what programs do you want? What would be easy for you to come to? What would be difficult? And then also, we want to increase our services to refugees and immigrants, because we have a really diverse population in Troy and a lot of people who have moved here from other countries. We have a great international language book collection, but we need to do more programming for those groups, and that just takes research again, trying to figure out where Oakland Literacy Council comes to the Troy all the time, and asking those volunteers, like, how can we crash like one of your conversation groups and make the conversation about what kind of programs would you be interested? What resources do you need? What's challenging? What can we help with? So that's just a little bit about me and about community engagement librarianship, and how great it is. It's a really fun way to learn about the community more. Oh, and I also wanted to mention, it's a way to connect departments too, because you probably heard me say I belong to the adult reference department technically, but it's like working with tweens. Where do they fall? Because teens are clearly an adult, but youth services, also serves that age group. So why are we splitting hairs? Like, why don't we just all do programs? And so much of our community is families. Why wouldn't we do all ages programming? And so it's a great way to reach out to different departments too, because even, I don't know if you guys work in libraries now, but it does happen where they sort of segregate, and it's silly, because it's, if it benefits our community to work together, why wouldn't we do that? Do you have any questions for me? Nothing? All right, well, thank you so much for having me.
Olivia, you do have that great international book collection, so are you planning to do any of that immigrant work or programming over the summer, or will that be more the fall? Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, great. And that's common that our communities are getting a bit more diverse. We're starting to get a little less segregated in Metro Detroit, which is good. And so I think it's good for the librarians to brainstorm from different facilities too.